Hello everyone and welcome to Been Watching, where I talk about what I've been watching for the past month, or Letterboxd Logs if I haven't gone through it, the rebrand. But either way, what I'm doing is the same, so let's talk about the films I watched in May, starting with the film I watched back in March. Yeah, I'm cheating a bit, but I couldn't include this in the last video because that one was focused on director Miike's Black Society trilogy. So I'm gonna talk about it here, and that film is Night of the Zoopocolypse. After a meteor lands in a zoo, the alien within it starts transforming the inhabitants into gooey zombies, leaving a group of animals to scramble to survive. The first thing that stood out to me was a style. I think it's easy for CGI movies to end up looking samey, but this one looked like a cartoon, like 2D drawings come to CG. Very stylized and appealing to the eye, and the subject of the movie is also part of what appealed to me. Not just because it's horror, which yes, I steer towards the horror genre, but also that it's kids horror. I find kids horror very entertaining and very interesting. Stuff like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? I love watching that stuff. You have to be skillful to make a horror which is very easily steered towards adults, but focus on certain elements to make it digestible for kids. And that's something that this movie does here. While still, the danger is still palpable. That's one thing that surprised me. Even though it's a kids movie, some moments are quite intense, so it doesn't forget the horror and suspense of its genre. This is baby's first zombie movie. This is a movie where if you're a fan of body snatchers or other zombie flicks, this is a good movie to show, well, if you're a parent watching this, to show your kid and introduce them to the movies you like without actually scarring them for life. It wears its influence on its sleeve, and that helps it in terms of eliminating any critique or eliminating some critique of it being derivative, and that's its self-awareness. There is a character, a lemur, who fakes injuries to get into the nurse's ward so he can watch TV, more particularly monster movies. He's a character who guides the other survivor animals because he knows the tropes of these movies, and he often spells them out, which can end up kind of annoying after a while. It started off charming, and I do like that it is self-aware. I think it needs to be self-aware if it's going to play the tropes within it as straight as this movie does. So it needs that self-awareness, but I think the lemur could have used other characteristics than just spelling out the tropes for us. That's probably the strongest negative I have about the movie. The movie knows there's a familiarity to it, and I worried about that at first. The main character, a wolf, a lone wolf, does things her own way and doesn't do things the way that her wolf clan does it. So the first few minutes I'm like, okay, she's going to go through an arc and learn to work together with others. And that's part of it where I thought, okay, well, if it's going to go through it that way, that can be predictable. But it fulfills her arc about halfway through, so I was like, oh, it didn't leave me knowing what to expect throughout the whole movie. By fulfilling the arc halfway, I was like, oh, well, what's going on then? This is light spoilers, but it's something that I just enjoyed about the movie quite a bit that I couldn't not mention here. The secondary character has to learn to work together with the wolf near the end. Nearing the climax, usually the protagonist has to learn the way to do things. They have to go through their character arc. But like I said, the protagonist fulfills her arc halfway through. And I think by having the secondary character fulfill their arc and the usual typical protagonist area nearing the third act, it only enforced the theme more that you can't work together with someone unless they're willing to work together with you. So it still fulfilled the arc you expect without fulfilling it the way you expect. To give some mentions of characters, I quite liked Poot, a baby hippo who is very much detached from the horror going on around her. And speaking of characters, every character in this movie is selfish to some extent. they are mostly looking out for themselves rather than the group. Of course, working together is the thing they have to do by the end. By having these characters very much similar in terms of motivation, looking out for themselves, I was surprised that they were that as distinct as they were in this movie. They did not feel samey. Each character I recognized as a separate being, and I liked them. And as much as the movie does fall into these tropes and ideas very much intentionally, I was surprised by the twist to solve the conundrum. A character did something that I didn't expect that showed how much the writers respected this character and their circumstances. I already spoiled a bit of how it does its arc, but I don't want to spoil its ending. That one you'll have to watch on your own. And this is a movie you should watch. I think they did it a disservice by releasing it around March over here. So keep it in the back of your mind for October or put it in your watch list. But this is definitely one you should watch for Halloween. Now on to the real first movie I saw in May. The Tom and Jerry movie, or Tom and Jerry the movie, I guess. Seeing their home demolished before their eyes, classic characters Tom and Jerry meet a stupid orphan on the run from a stupid aunt trying to nab the girl's stupid inheritance before her stupid father returns. Yeah, I didn't like this movie. You'd probably be hard-pressed to find someone who does. The plot makes no sense. I don't get how the aunt can get the inheritance without the father being dead. Or maybe it's that the father's gone adventuring too long, pretending to be Indiana Jones, that his guardianship runs out and it defaults to the aunt? But if that's the case, how great is the father Tom and Jerry are trying to return the daughter to? If he's a dad who's like, well, it's been fun adventuring, but oh boy, if I'm not home in an hour, my daughter is not my daughter anymore. So whichever way you piece this puzzle of a movie together, the story makes no sense. Another grave offense people hold against this movie is that Tom and Jerry talk.
I'm Tom.
I'm Jerry.
You talked!
I'm not too harsh on that aspect. Of course, it would be better if Tom and Jerry didn't talk. I watched this with my girlfriend and she cited the Shaun the Sheep movie, which is a movie that's completely dialogueless. I strongly admire that movie for being able to tell a story without any lines whatsoever. So, of course, Tom and Jerry the movie could have done it, but realizing what this movie is, a cheap cash grab at a cartoon recognizable name, well, I set my expectations low, and found out I should have set them lower. While I don't necessarily object to Tom and Jerry talking, if you're going to make them talk, at least make them say something. They have almost no character whatsoever in this movie, particularly after the orphan girl invades the story and makes this a Don Bluth all dogs go to heaven ripoff, which just adds to how slow and arduous the movie is. The first act has to go through why Tom and Jerry are on the streets and homeless, go through stupid musical numbers, the first two of which are already redundant to each other because they both get Tom to try to befriend Jerry. So they have to go through all that literal song and dance in the first act, and then they have to wedge technically another first act right after it, where the orphan girl exposits her story and why you should care. But as I was saying, the dialogue. Once after the two first acts start and we get on with the story, Tom and Jerry are relinquished to just explainy dialogue. They aren't characters. It's stuff like, oh, look at this locket. The orphan must be around somewhere. They have absolutely nothing to say. So why do something as big as making Tom and Jerry talk? Usually I try to spin even a positive note on any movie. And one part that almost got me there was the animation. I have a fondness for 2D animation, and I admire the thought of what Warner Brothers could have been in the animation space, particularly looking later on like Cats Don't Dance or Iron Giant. And, well, I guess this one isn't necessarily an example of Warner Brothers, but a subsidiary of Cartoon Network's Powerpuff Girls movie. I look at these and I think, oh, what could have happened with Warner if they had greater successes with some of their movies in the film animation space? So even that thought and my fondness for 2D animation can help even a bad movie like Rover Dangerfield. Even that movie I have some positivity for. So I watched Tom and Jerry, the movie, and thought, well, the animation looks okay. And then I looked at the release date and that it was released in the 90s, and it does not look like a 90s animation movie. It looks like it's from a decade's past, so there goes my only positive note. It also just doesn't feel like Tom and Jerry. It feels like they injected them into a cheap Don Bluth knockoff, which I guess technically that is what it is by the end of the day. Even when it tries to be into toony antics, like the big chase at the end, even that doesn't really work, because Tom and Jerry and the stupid orphan girl are on a boat. They're on a stream going down a narrow river while everyone else is doing some weird chase around the road and such. Tom and Jerry has to do nothing. And it's a chase scene where the protagonists have no tension whatsoever. It's just jingling keys going on around them, posing for entertainment. And even then it doesn't make sense because they're trying to get the girl so that they can get this bounty put on her. But really, would it even work if they caught her by the end? Because the aunt is chasing her anyway. Even the basis for this stupid chase doesn't make any sense. And as a chase, it's just faulty anyway because the main characters don't have anything to worry about. The best thing about the Tom and Jerry movie to me is the intrigue I find in it. I know many people have hated this movie since they were a kid. I mean, Tom and Jerry is probably one of the first cartoons a kid watches, so I could only imagine seeing them sing and dance and in this plot that's nothing like the cartoon. They'd be disappointed. I find child disappointment in media intriguing because to be disappointed, you must have standards. So for people to have this opinion on the movie very early in life, it comes to my mind like, oh, this is part of the development of standards. The movie, it creates such a response in people that even kids can hate it. So, hey, that's the most interesting thing I found about the Tom and Jerry movie. Next up is a movie that's quite more violent. It has some, you can say some wacky antics, I guess. Not really. That's my attempt at a segue. I'm talking about A24's Green Room. A no-name indie band scores a gig at a bar only to find it's a skinhead hangout. After witnessing a murder, the neo-Nazis try to silence the band, while our musical leads do all they can to stay one step ahead and survive. This is a movie that I liken to the likes of Hereditary or Midsummer. Not in terms of horror, they do things quite differently, but in terms of, this is a depressing watch. You want to watch this movie when you're in a good mood. I don't want to know how your day goes if you're depressed and then you watch this movie. You want to have an emotional high to have the leg room to sink down low. When you watch this movie, you need that feel good to balance out with your soon-to-come depression. I thought of the term catharsis while reflecting on this movie, not in the sense that it's cathartic, it's stress relieving, it's really the opposite, but in the literary sense of when you read through a story or experience a story, it feels as though you went through it. That's what I mean by catharsis. And yeah, I felt like I went through something watching this. I felt like I went through a heart attack. I stopped my breath. I was on the edge of my seat. The suspense in this movie is second to none. This is a type of scenario I like. Comparing it vaguely to Death Note, where two characters are playing pretty much a game of chess, similar to this movie, the main characters and the Nazis can't see what the other is doing and they have to expect and predict what each other will do. So it's a movie that gets in your head, it gets you thinking, okay, what are they gonna do? Well, what are these guys gonna do? What would I do? I found it sharp, on top of just being a raw thriller. It's also a bottle movie contained in this one green room and the area around it. Either way, it's a very limited movie, and I like that. It makes the characters feel confined, it adds to the tension. Speaking of the characters, while the bottle premise can complement characters, the cast didn't stand out to me too much. They're just the band to me. If one member died, I wasn't necessarily invested in them as an individual character as much as I was invested in the band. Oh no, one more of them is gone. The band in general feels really authentic. They do this one funny interview near the beginning of the movie where the band talks about how they aren't on social media because it loses their essence when they aren't in live form. The kind of pretentious thing you would expect an indie band to say. But also, that line interested me because I saw it as the undercurrent of the movie. The characters say in this interview that they lose authenticity when not presented live. And one example of this is that during that interview that's recorded for a radio station, when bringing up their inspirations, they say the names of all these punk bands, all the ones you would expect. But later, in the green room, when they're in this stressful situation, they return to the question, and they say pop idols like Cher, Madonna, which is amusing. My girlfriend, I actually didn't notice it the first time, but my girlfriend noted it to me. To me, thematically, I was like, wow, that connects to it where when they're presenting for a recorded medium, they have this pretense about how they wouldn't want to come off. So they're inauthentic in that moment. In their horrible situation where they're trapped by Nazis, they end up giving an honest answer to the question. So it proves their point in the moment, in the live, is more authentic. But what does that say about the film? The film is a premeditated media, down to the script's planning. I mean, after the script, it had to be edited. After the script, it had to be filmed. And then, film is a premeditated medium. It's not live. So it made me wonder, what does this message say, which is ironically within a medium that is counter to it? Okay, so now I'm going to get into spoilers and talk about the ending real quick, so skip to here if you're worried about that. In the end, a girl, now an ex-Nazi who's caught up in all this, leaves with the last surviving member of the band, but they don't run away into town. She leads him into the orchard, which is owned by the head of the gang, and she kills him. And this stood out to me because it seemed unrealistic to do. Would you really go out to get revenge on the main antagonist rather than going to safety first and foremost? I guess it's not too unbelievable, but it stood out to me because for a movie that embraces authenticity, it relied on the trope of poetic justice. The villain must be punished in the ending. So that's the most typical cinematic thing to happen in the movie, ending on the big bad dying. But by relying on that, it confessed the theme of the movie that the main characters support, that in doing a recorded premeditation, not live, you end up embracing inauthenticities, where in real life you'd probably try to run away and get the hell away as far as you can. Instead, to fulfill this trope, to fulfill the satisfaction of a typical movie, they enact poetic justice on the bad guy. One, it is satisfying because of course he's a neo-Nazi, you want to see him dead. But by going into that typical satisfaction of a movie, it further reinforces the theme of the narrative in a sort of metatextual sense when you consider the grand tropes of film and storytelling. It used that to reinforce its theme. And I can't say how much that's intentional. Perhaps it could just be to try to make a satisfying ending. It was satisfying, but I see this further meaning in it that elevated the film just a little bit more. So that's what I had been watching in May. What have you been watching? Did you see anything last month that you want to tell me about? Are any of the films I mentioned here any that interest you? I just like getting a conversation going, and I love spreading films, and I love hearing about them, so, hey, tell me about whatever, or don't if you're too shy. Either way, I appreciate you watching, especially to the end here. Maybe check out my next video or shorts or whatever I produce. But anyways, thank you for watching here and now, so, hey, take care, and I'll see you next time.